Alright, it's that magical time of the year as Next Fest is once again upon us. And there are so many games from this one to cover that I had to kind of start splitting up these videos, or those will just be like a 2 to 3 hour long piece. So welcome to part 1 of our June 2024 Next Fest edition, as this will be covering the first 2 nights of the event. We are starting things off with Metal Slug Tactics. The gang is back, but this time instead of run and gun, it is turn-based. When the evil general is up to his usual antics, our team must take him out one turn at a time. So, we are trading in arcade-style play for more of a kind of tactical or puzzle strategy, maybe something similar to that of Into the Breach. How this works is you'll take a team of 3, and you'll unlock additional characters as you play through and hopefully win runs. Each character comes with different perks, starting weapon, and special abilities they can activate. The kind of mechanic here is that you have defense in the form of dodge, and you'll gain this both by standing next to blue cover, doesn't matter where you stand, there's no kind of directional shots in this one, as well as movement. The further a character moves from their starting position will kind of give them more dodge, which is their way of mitigating damage. You'll also earn adrenaline, which is used to power your various special abilities. Now, with each character having different special powers as well as different weapons, does also lead into kind of the game's unique element, and that is sync attacks. If a character attacks an enemy when one of their allies is also in range of attacking, they will join in on the attack, essentially letting you to double team them. This is very important because, much like Into the Breach and other these kinds of tactical or puzzle strategy games, you will most often always be outnumbered, and you'll need to do everything and anything in order to kind of tilt the odds in your favor. As characters level up, you'll be able to choose from randomly chosen perks, unlock new abilities, as well as find weapon mods that can change the properties of their weapons. This one is definitely on the harder side, and the Into the Breach comparison is very apt here, as you'll need to very carefully plan your turns out and try to deal with the enemies any which way you can, as being outnumbered means that you have to make use of everything in order to try and get past them, and one wrong turn or one wrong play can easily lead to things spiraling out of control. So this one is definitely on the harder side, and I'm not sure if fans of Metal Slug are going to be into a game where you're not going to be able to use quarters or extra credits to save your life. And with the difficulty itself, I'm curious to see what they're going to do in terms of any kind of roguelite elements, ways of making things easier for you to start the game with. So if you're a fan of Into the Breach and that kind of more like puzzle strategy aspect to things, then definitely check this one out and see if it kind of works for you. We now switch to another unusual combination. This time it is Pinball and Metroidvania with Pinball Spire. A giant tower house an unknown secret and treasure, and you play a lone pinball that's going to attempt to brave the tower, well, by flipping yourself up it one room at a time. So this is quite frankly like a very literal combination of the two. As you play through, you'll be able to unlock new powers and abilities that will let you manipulate your ball, give it additional properties, and so on. But you must, well, use pinball in order to move from room to room, solve the various amounts of puzzles, etc., etc. Now, this game is not going for a kind of simulated or realistic physics model. It's more arcadey in that respect. And that can be a little bit frustrating in places, as there are definitely times where it felt a lot harder to line off shots than I am accustomed to with some of these games. As a very interesting point, at least from what we play in the demo, there does not appear to be any kind of tilting or kind of manipulating the ball once it is kind of moving from a flipper. And this can make it very easy to, well, just immediately drain if you're not careful. Now, as the game goes on, by bonking the enemies, you'll gain experience that will raise up your mana bar, with mana being used to kind of use your different powers, such as slow down time, setting your ball on fire, and many others. Now, I don't know if this game will give you like a double jump ball bounce kind of power, as it is of course a Metroidvania. I am very intrigued to see kind of how far they're going to take this concept in terms of different powers and the different rooms. It's hard to tell at the moment where the difficulty of it will lie, as there did not appear to be a way to kind of tilt or drain the ball, as you'll just go down to the previous room. And I would recommend playing this with a gamepad, not keyboard and mouse, as the game is quite button heavy once you start unlocking all the different powers and ways of manipulating the ball beyond just using the flippers. So this one is going to be a very unusual title. If you're a fan of pinball, or like kind of the arcade pinball, and looking for a very original take on it, then give this one a try. We now go to Wild Bastards. This is the sequel to Void Bastards. You're going to be hearing bastards a lot in this next section. We play as a gang of outlaws who are trying to escape the law and a very evil gang that is out to get them. They have a mysterious ship that seems to want to bring the gang back together and grants them the ability to revive themselves. And they want to explore the galaxy, get their gang back, and survive one shootout after another. Now, the first game was kind of a mix of immersive sim roguelite with shooter gameplay to go with it. And with Wild Bastards, this is more or less on just focusing on the shooter gameplay. You'll land on different planets looking for resources and getting into shootouts. The shootouts take in the form of a kind of very short arena fight, where you'll be able to switch between the different characters of your posse that are together to deal with the different enemies. Each character is a unique individual with their own abilities, personality, and more. So Doc Casino over here has the power of gambling on their side, and they'll gain a different perk whenever they kind of enter a shootout for the first time. While Spider Rosa, being a, well, Spider Woman, she can reload one of her guns while still firing from the other one, and being a spider means she can slow down characters with her webbing. Each character also gets a stunt, which is their special move that is triggered by having juice. Now, as you play through the game, you will unlock additional characters, and in keeping with the roguelite nature of it, when you leave a sector, you will lose all the gear and kind of your basic resources. The only way to permanently upgrade a character during a run is to collect ace cards, which will then let you add one of 3 randomly chosen perks to that character that persists. The game still has an amazing aesthetic to it, and I really like the look of this one in terms of kind of like how unusual the characters are, and especially some of these environments are quite stunning. However, the main issue that I have with Wild Bastards is that the gunplay just doesn't feel as snappy as it should. You see, the first game, the gunplay wasn't as solid either in that one, but that was tempered by the fact that you had the additional tools and environmental interactions and the more that immersive sim aspect. In this one, all you have is the gunplay. And there are times where it just felt like I was not hitting the enemy, and when I did, they just kind of like shrugged it off. Like there's no real impact or feel to the guns themselves. And with these smaller environments, it can be a little bit harder to engage with these enemies, as your health stays persistent while you're on a planet. You lose your entire posse, and it is kind of the end of the run. Now, I don't know how the overall roguelite nature is going to work from run to run. There are a lot of characters in your gang, and they will also have interpersonal kind of complaints and issues that you'll need to work your way through. It's a very interesting game, and again, this plays almost nothing like Void Bastards, other than featuring a very similar aesthetic and gunplay. So if you didn't enjoy the first game, I don't know if what's different here is going to keep you engaged or not, but there is definitely a very original take on FPS and roguelite gameplay here. So if this idea sounds interesting to you, I would at least give this demo a try. We now go to Blade Chimera. This is the latest game from Team Ladybug, who did Touhou Luna Nights, as well as the Record of a Lotus War game. So, we are back with another very challenging and original Metroidvania, and probably kind of like Touhou, is going to be very challenging as well. It is the future, and demons have taken over. We play a hunter who's responsible for dealing with them any which way they can. But when on a job, they are bonded to a mysterious specter. They'll have to figure out why this ghost is aiding them, what is going on with the demons, and maybe save the world as we know it. So, our gameplay here should be familiar to if you played either Record or Touhou. You're going to be using sword, gun, and a variety of powers in order to deal with enemies, and like those games, everything hits very hard, so you better learn these mechanics inside and out. Once you get your ghosts eating you, they take in the form of, well, a blade. And you can use this blade for different purposes. Besides just slashing enemies with it, you can also stick it into walls to use as a makeshift platform, as well as slam it down into the ground to create a barrier that protects you from most minor bullets that come your way. As you play through, you'll get access to different weapons, different ways of building your character, and you're going to make use of all of them in order to survive. Now, the demo for this one, much like Record, was very short. We really didn't get a chance to see too much of kind of any advanced maneuvers or weapons that you'll find, but it definitely looks like this is going to be another very challenging and very kind of technical Metroidvania, like Touhou. So, if you enjoyed those games, and looking for kind of the latest engine, again, if you're a Team Ladybug fan, then this should be a given that you're going to try this one out. And I am very excited to see where this game is going to go when it is released. We now switch to another potentially challenging game with Big Boy Boxing. Now, we interviewed the developer of this one ending last year, and it's finally time for us to see the extended demo of it. So this is a game that, as you can tell by the footage, looks like boxing or Punch-Out! But I can tell you, and as you're going to see over this section, this does not play like those games that we've seen before. In many respects, this kind of feels more like Cuphead, or a boss rush centric take on that design, except replace platforming with boxing. Each enemy is a unique individual with their own tells, attack patterns, and challenges for you to go after. At certain points during the match, the enemy will flash yellow at a specific buy part, and you can hit that, it will cancel their attack and provide you with a kind of bonus thunder, which can be used to activate your uppercuts. The challenge in this one is not so much in the Punch-Out style, where the fights are supposed to be very mechanical. Instead, it's more about just you figuring out what the enemy's patterns are and dealing with them without getting a hit. So this one is definitely on the more challenging side. One of the things that I found is that it can be a little bit hard to read animation tells. This is a game where if you're kind of waiting for the animation to kind of give you the rundown or the idea of what the attack is, it's going to be too late for you to respond. And half of the battle of this game is figuring out exactly what the enemy's attack patterns are and how do you dodge them. Because some of these attacks can get a little unusual for a boxing game. And like when we first played the original demo, I love the aesthetic of this game with the animations and the variety of characters and boxing matches that you will get into are kind of boxing matches. Now, as I said, because of how the combat plays out, this does feel like it can be a little bit more on the frustrating side. One thing that we did not get a chance to see in this demo is the kind of roguelite or persistent upgrade feature that we were talking about during our interview that kind of gives you more health or lets you enhance the properties of your punches. So I don't know if that's going to be like a separate mode or like some other feature in this. But if you enjoy Punch-Out! And any kind of like boss rush centric game and looking for another one with a very wacky assortment of characters to play against, then definitely give this demo a try. It's time for another boss rush focused game, but one a little bit easier to get with one-button bosses. This one has you dealing with a variety of bosses that come in, well, different shapes. In order to win, you must pew-pew them while doing your best to dodge their attacks. The one button name comes in by the fact that firing is done automatically. Pressing the button will activate whatever is your movement-based ability, and you can choose between different guns and movement powers before you start playing, and there is also a roguelike mode as well. So the faster your ship moves, at least the starting weapon will affect damage, but each weapon has its own behavior for getting the most damage out of it. Your job? Deal with the bosses and their variety of bullet patterns and explosions, and kill them as quickly as you can to get the highest rating. So, it's one of those games that it looks like it's going to be very easy, but I'm sure as things go on and the boss patterns become more advanced, it can get quite challenging, and there is good variety with the different guns and movement options you can have. So I would definitely give this one a try if you're looking for a boss rush game that is going to be, well, very easy to play, provided that you can press one single button. We now switch over to Fantasy Boy. In this one we play, well, a young boy who's a knight in training, and when the princess has been kidnapped and is being attacked by an evil dragon, we are going to have to scour the kingdom to save her and save the day. So the art style on this one is really quite amazing. I love the kind of cartoony look to it. It reminds me a lot of Cuphead. But for this one, your challenge is going to be exploring the kingdom looking for various souls, which will allow you to kind of regain your life if you ever run out of health. If you run out of health, you'll turn into a skeleton, and if you have enough souls, you'll be able to revive back as boy form, die in skeleton form, and it is game over. And you must explore the variety of environments and use your different movement abilities to get through it. Now, don't let the cartoony graphics fool you. This game is actually quite on the challenging side, as enemies can easily run into you and do a free hit, and you'll have to make use of your dash as well as your double jump in order to kind of avoid any hazards that get in your way. So there's going to be a variety of enemies and environments in this one. I don't know there's going to be a lot of replayability or unlocks or progression or things like that, but definitely curious to see where this one is going to go. So while our last game was on the easier side to learn and play, Fantasy Boy is definitely going to be on the challenging side. So if you're looking for a game with a great aesthetic and a lot of challenge to go with it, then definitely check it out. We now switch to another game with a very adorable aesthetic and art style, and that is Waltz and Jam. We play as Waltz, a newly awakened ghost in the afterlife. They are unfortunately dead. In order to survive the afterlife, they have teamed up with the Spectre Jam, and they must explore, looking for tickets in order to get access to a very special place that will do something quite wondrous for Waltz. This is a 3D platformer, where you'll explore each area looking for upgrades, get into fights, and complete a variety of quests for a very wide assortment of characters. I love the art style of this one, with some really great backgrounds and character designs. Now the gameplay here should be quite familiar to anyone who's played a 3D platformer in the past 20 years. You'll run, you'll jump, you'll use weapons, and you'll try and get through each area. If you've had any experience with a 3D platformer, then Waltz and Jam should be well within your capabilities to play. This one feels like it's going to be more on the easier side or for like a new player, rather than a super challenging game. There will be bonus quests and upgrades that you can find, as well as getting access to different toy-based attacks that can be used for puzzle solving and combat. So this is one that there really isn't too much more to be said about. If you're looking for a very adorable and charming 3D platformer, and one that is not going to tax you either in terms of combat or movement tech, then definitely check this one out. And I am definitely interested to see where it will go in the finished release. We now go from something from the kids to something a lot more challenging with Galaxy Too Far. This is a logistics automation game where you have been tasked to gather the resources and equipment needed to absorb an entire planet and its resources for your creator. And to do that, you will have to set up all the equipment, logistics, and make sure it's all running and powered up. So the onboarding in this one is definitely the weakest aspect of it from the demo, and it took me quite a bit to get into this one. So how this all works is that you'll set up various mining spots on the planet. From those mining spots, you can either set up drones to carry resources or put down kind of like these logistics conveyor belts that you can use to move the resources around. They will need to go into factories in order to be refined, and then into larger factories in order to be used in construction of the various materials and other buildings that you will need to accomplish your goal. You need to send up resources to kind of a beacon, which will upgrade once you send them enough, which will unlock new materials, new tools, and new challenges. So the difficulty in this one is definitely in terms of starting up. Not only do you have a lot of small icons at the bottom of the screen that you're trying to figure out, but the game doesn't really give you a lot to get going, and it is very easy to soft lock yourself at the starting gates, because you need to gather specific resources in order to then turn into kind of the first step in production that will then let you construct the buildings that you need, specifically the mining building and the buildings that allow you to construct more stuff. Once you get past that, then the game begins to open up, and it looks like there's going to be a lot in terms of setting up your logistics network and moving resources around. If you are not a fan of logistics style games like Factorio, Dyson, and so on, this is definitely not the game to play or to start learning. This one is, like I said, on the harder side. But if you enjoyed those games and looking for another one that's going to be challenging in its own right and does some very interesting things unique for the genre, then definitely give this one a shot. We keep flip-flopping between easy and hard for these last few games. For our next one, this is Astrodle, which hopefully I pronounced that right. This is an incremental / I guess shooter style game. You are trying to ascend into godhood, and you must get aid from the various zodiacs, who they will lend you their power in order to do so. The rules of this one are quite simple. You're going to shoot these blobs. Each color blob represents a different zodiac. Different resources will be used for different upgrades, which will unlock new features, enhance weapons, give you new weapons, new stuff, and just ever make those numbers keep going up and up and up. As with any idle game, you'll also have to accomplish missions that can also grant you additional bonuses, and you will also be able to reset your progress in order to gain permanent upgrades that will allow you to ascend ever further. I like the different uses of the missions, as well as kind of like the theme and the aesthetic of this. I'm curious to see where they're going to add additional features, and especially seeing what the other zodiacs bring to the table. So this is one for the idle fans in the audience. If you're not a fan of incrementals, idols, and numbers on top of numbers, then this one is not going to do it for you. But if you enjoy that game style and looking for another one to kind of zone out to and relax while watching more numbers, then definitely give this demo a try. We now turn to what could quite possibly be a demo of the event for me, and perhaps like the perfect game for Josh I could find, and that is Shape Hero Factory. So the tag of this one is quite simple. What if we combine Shapes.io with a deck building roguelike? And if that doesn't convince you to either play or ignore this game, then I don't know what will. Our story is that we are trying to fight the devil, who is trapped in a mysterious book that is certainly not the Necronomicon. And to do that, we must use the power of automation, paint, ink, and cute little heroes to do the job. So the gameplay here works like this. You'll choose which kind of battles you'll investigate on a node-based system like a deck-building roguelike. Before each battle, you are given several minutes to build your automation and factory line. In order to create heroes, you must combine various shapes. When the shapes combine to a character, you can then send that character off to defend yourself via the portal. The more of a character that you build during this kind of pre-battle stage can level them up, which, provided you've unlocked the necessary upgrades, will kind of give them a stronger version. Characters can also be combined further to create advanced classes. while we didn't get a chance to see it during this demo, there's also the ability to combine characters and shapes with ink, further boosting their abilities. You can also get access to pieces and equipment that can modify or change the shapes in various ways. Move them around underground, cut them up, combine them, and all that other great stuff. The deck building comes in by the fact that major upgrades are tied to a research tree, and you can choose which research or kind of like blocks of research you have for that run. This can make certain shapes give you more value, unlock different pieces of equipment to make your life easier, get access to more parts, etc, etc. When time runs out, the game turns into kind of a very basic combat scene, where the characters that you send through the portal must defend your crystal from an ever-escalating waves of enemies. As the game goes on, more enemy types and enemies are introduced, and you'll also be able to field more characters and get more abilities like that. Now, I don't know from our time with this demo how the roguelite nature of it will work. Like, what are going to be permanent upgrades, persistence, things like that. But, like I said, like, this is a game that I don't think I've seen a more perfect combination of mechanics for someone like me, which makes this game very dangerous for my free time. Because I've been looking for a game that combines kind of the automation, logistics side of Factorio, Dyson Sphere, and so on, but having more of a structure to it rather than just build for the sake of building. And if they can get this combination right for the finished release, this is going to be a fantastic entry for logistics fans. So if anything that I said during this section sounds interesting to you, then you definitely need to try this demo. And I'm going to pretend it doesn't exist because I have to play even more demos. I don't have the time to go back to this one. We now switch over to Morn, a boomer shooter style FPS, where we play a priest of an order that is basically founded by Van Helsing. When demons invade, we have a shotgun, and it is time to rip and tear. Our gameplay here is again kind of very traditional boomer shooter, so 90s era shooting where you'll be running at full speed, shooting at lots of enemies, and wielding as many guns as one can possibly hold. The aesthetic and look of this game, I can't tell if it's using voxels, but it has kind of like the block-based look of, say, a Minecraft. But you will not be doing any kind of crafting in this one, I can assure you. The gunplay is really well done. Each weapon has a suitable heft and oomph to it, as you'll use it to destroy all the manner of demons, monsters, and more that get in your way. Every level has multiple secrets to find, and from what we played in this one, again, it doesn't seem to be doing too much like out of the ordinary for the genre, but it did feel really great to play. The boss fight did feel a little health spongy, but I was playing this on highest difficulty, which could have also been a factor here and there. So if you're someone who likes your shooters booming and looking for another one to check out, then definitely give a look at Morn. We now go to Ecognomix. This is a roguelite meets city builder. Gnomes are trying to dig down into the earth to find treasure, food, and more. And in order to do that, they must use the resources they gather to rebuild their town on the surface to dig ever further down. So this is a kind of, I guess, somewhat of a economic slash like puzzle style of design. As you go on a run, you'll be able to use wood in order to acquire different gnomes. Each gnome type has a specific purpose, and they'll be able to either do damage, gather resources, or some other purpose. You need wood in order to purchase new gnomes that can aid you, and there is a limit on the number of gnomes you can have on the field at one time. Food is used to bribe the giant killer bats that are swarming around you so they don't chase you out and end your run. Your kind of mission is to get as far down as you can go gathering resources, which in turn you can then use on the surface to build new structures or craft into better resources or goods that will then either unlock new features or can be used as a way of getting bonus starting resources when you begin a run. So this one is definitely hitting a lot of very different points with its gameplay. And it's one of those titles, like a lot of the kind of like turn-based, economic-focused games, where you can have that downward spiral effect if you're not careful. The amount of food that you need to keep appeasing the bats grows with each floor or each depth you go down. So you need to be kind of, again, producing more than you're consuming if you want to stand a chance. But as you unlock the higher tier gnomes, it begins to kind of give way and give you a lot more ways of succeeding. For instance, once you unlock the cook gnome, the cook can combine food and wood to create better food. That gives you far more value than just popping the chickens that are on tiles. There are boss fights, and it looks like there's going to be quite a meaty, no pun intended, city building side as you use that to unlock again new resources, new features, new gnomes, etc. Another one that I really enjoyed and that is also quite dangerous for my free time. So if you like your city building with a touch of roguelike, or vice versa, then definitely give this one a check. We now switch over to Lone Fungus 2, a Metroidvania that is currently having a Kickstarter campaign while doing their Next Fest demo. This is of course the sequel to the first game where you play as, well, a lone fungus who has been tasked to explore a mysterious underground kingdom looking for fame, treasure, glory, and anything else they find along the way. Using your whip, you'll explore the environment kind of in the traditional Metroidvania fare. You do get access to sub-weapons that you can find or buy at the various shops. As you explore the world, as always, you're going to be finding different upgrades and items that will aid you. And as a nice touch, the game features a kind of in-game alert system. Whenever you come across an area that you do not have the right tool or item to get, it will mark it on the map for you, and I really like this quality of life feature. So our gameplay again is going to be more on your standard Metroidvania type. You'll be able to whip things in any direction, and you'll gain access to different items and upgrades that will then let you explore further. Whenever you beat a boss fight, you can also upgrade your character in terms of different stats, which in turn will affect kind of your focus for the game. Do you want to be more offensive heavy, defense, etc, etc. Now, one thing that I was not a fan of is that the game features very few and far checkpoints or save stations, and they also double as your fast travel. However, you can only access fast travel by spending your money in-game in order to turn that on. And there is quite a lot of distance and time loss if you die in between save points. Enemies do quite a bit of damage to you, especially if you run out of armor. And if you're not careful, one lone hit can really do a number on you, even at full health at the start. So our gameplay again, if you're a fan of Metroidvania design, then definitely check out Lone Fungus 2. I am curious to see where this game will go, and I do hope that either the Kickstarter will succeed, or they'll come back with another campaign, as there is definitely some great gameplay here. So if you enjoy what you're seeing, be sure to check out the demo, and be sure to visit that Kickstarter page. It's time for our first survival horror of the event with Edge of Sanity, a survival horror game with a heavy emphasis on the survival. It's late 80s Alaska, and a mysterious organization has caused some kind of trouble, and it seems like Lovecraftian forces are at work. In order to figure out what's going on and stay one step ahead of them, you must survive, craft, and try not to go insane in the process. The art style here definitely reminds me of Darkest Dungeon, except we are not going to be doing any kind of turn-based combat here. The game is kind of both a mix of handmade sections and levels, as well as kind of randomly generated ones featuring different resources. Your job is to explore each area looking for resources, survivors, and moving the story along as you can. You need food and water in order to keep everyone alive, but you will also need to find resources that you can use to either craft for weapons and equipment, or to upgrade your camp, which will allow you to get access to more resources and better features. Sanity comes into play that if your sanity meter kind of fills up, or I guess your insanity meter, you will get a random trauma, which could be good, could be bad, or somewhere in between. Now, the game itself is definitely focusing more on the survival side. While you do get some basic weapons, this is not an action horror game. You do not want to be engaging with these enemies in direct conflict. You can use stones to distract, hit them, or the environment to get them out of the way. Now, it was a little hard to see just kind of like how far things will go in the later parts from our demo, as you will have to kind of micromanage your base at least at the start to get it stabilized and getting resources going. But definitely some potential here with a very different take on survival horror, and I'm kind of curious to see, I guess, how much RNG or kind of like the focus of the campaign when the game is released. So, if you like your horror with a bit of survival, or your survival with a bit of horror, then give this one a check. And with that, part 1 of our Next Fest showcase is done. But we are not anywhere close to finishing it all. This was only 2 nights of our coverage. Be sure to tune into the stream to catch these live, and there'll be more parts coming in the following days. Let me know what you think of these games down below, and see everyone in the next video, and for the stream for even more Next Festing. Thanks for watching, and a special thank you to our Patreon supporters. If you enjoyed the video, do the YouTubing stuff, be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon, and you're interested in more in my thoughts on design, check out my game design books.